So where do we go from here? Where does the trail go from here?
Forward.
Forward.
Trail only goes one direction.
Does it go north or south?
It doesn't. It goes neither. It only goes forward. There's no other direction to hike this trail but forward, and it's going to go forward in its growth as far as the trail towns are going to grow. It's going to go forward as its growth and the amenities are going to grow. It's going to go forth in its exposure online, its funding, its impact in the world, but it is never, ever going to be more than dirt, rocks, and roots. That's it. It's a line in the dirt.
Well, cool, man. So thank you for coming out here and meeting me, coming all the way from your home. I've been really excited about this opportunity. Just come and talk with you, chat with you, and hang out with you.
Yeah, I was excited when you called. You were like, let's go hiking.
Because you're Odie, you're Matthew Norman, and for those of us who have been on trail the past several years, we know who you are.
I didn't mean for that to happen. That was not my intention. That was never my intention.
Yeah. But the cool thing is we don't know about who you are just based on what other people tell us. We know who you are by your deeds. And when it comes to trail personalities, there's a lot of them out there. And one of the things that I found personally is that when people have human interactions, there's some level of manipulation in every kind of human interaction. We're always trying to get a response out of somebody. Or
times 10 on social media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing that sticks out the most to me about you is that when we were on trail, the servitude that you had was selfless. That's the big thing that sticks out to me.
You knew me in 2020.
That's right.
2020 was a year that if you were going to be involved in the trail, you had to be 100% in. There was no room in the year 2020 for trail support that just wanted to come play. There was no playing in 2020. I mean, there was, but in 2020 it was about hikers hiking the trail. Mm-hmm. And for those of us who were on the outside serving, you just had to be all in. So you knew me at my best year of servitude, but that servitude had been trained into me over the previous years, going back to 2014. Mm-hmm. And all that preparation of serving hikers, which for me was just a lot of fun and stuff, but that all came to a necessity in 2020. So I'd say 2020 was a very powerful year for all trail angels and hikers alike. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and we're all thankful that you were all in, that you have been all in, and because of that, like you said, 2020 was a special year. And although you didn't hike that year, you are an honorary class of 2020 member. I think we all consider you that.
You accuse me of not hiking. I hiked some.
You did.
I may be a yellow blazer, but I'm not a purist yellow blazer. I cheat and hike.
There you go. But nevertheless, man, you're a huge. You've got a great character. You've got a big personality, and that all comes from somewhere. And I've been learning a lot about how our personalities and our characters are shaped early on in life, especially when we're younger. And so I really don't know much about your story, Odie. So I am curious, where did this all begin? Not just the trail, but where did Odie begin in life? Where are you from?
So, Alabama mostly, and I say Alabama because I was born in Texas, but most of my life was in Alabama and Florida. My dad did construction, and we moved around a lot, so I was able to meet several thousand people over the course of my young age. And then I finished high school. I actually finished it early and didn't attend my senior year. I'd gone to enough high schools as it was. So I was thinking that was going to give me a nice boost in life, and it did not. It gave freedom to a 17-year-old child who was not ready for that freedom. And so I stumbled and fell into the military, joined the United States Navy, and probably the best decision I ever made at the worst time of my life possible. And so they shaved my head bald and told me to walk the ship. So I did my job and I stayed in there, and And it really, that was kind of the growth that you should get as a young child. I was just very immature, and I got that growth through the military. And I'm very glad for that opportunity. So I get out of the military, completely directionless, didn't know where to go. I started a lawn care company. And the thing is, I am a very driven individual. So I don't just start it, I go all the way as far as I can. And I built this thing into something that could have been very sustaining over time. And then the other part of my personality is I crush and crash anything I have. I throw it away. And I don't know why, but there have been several stages in my life where I build and then destroy. And that's another life lesson. So destroying that, I mean, utterly, I came to a nothingness in my life. I owned nothing. I lived nowhere. I had no opportunities, nothing. And when you get to nothing, you got to make a very hard decision. And if you make it or not, you're going to make it. You're either going to sit there and die, or you're going to get up and create something. I wanted to die. I didn't want to do anything else. I didn't want to go any further. I'd seen enough. I'd been attached to enough things in the world that I didn't want to. I didn't see anything worth having. And then I heard about the Appalachian Trail. 3 months before, actually 2, because I started March 2nd, I heard about the Appalachian Trail at the end of December. 2 months later, I said, well, that's a good starting point. So I sold what little I did have, and I bought mostly military gear because that was my experience. And I decided to basically climb Springer Mountain and see how far I got. And I, honest to God, did not know the trail ended on Mount Katahdin when I started in 2013. I knew that it went to Maine, but I'd only known about the trail for 2 months. I'd never backpacked before. I'd never done anything. And some hikers were talking about Mount Katahdin. And then later on, some more hikers were talking about Mount Katahdin. And I remember that I said, what is Mount Catawba? And they all started oh, no, Katahdin. Like, oh yeah, so what's Katahdin? And they were like, what? Yeah, you're not gonna make it.
Oh,
and I remember saying, what is Mount Katahdin? And they were just like, wow, do you know where you're at? Nope, don't. I got most of my good gear out of hiker boxes. Most of my meals came from a lot of early trail magic. I was hiking on my military disability check of, I think it was only $413 at the time, which I had assumed $100 to eat, and that was all I needed. Turns out you do need a lot more on the trail, but I needed to be on the trail, so then the trail community supported it and kept it and protected my hike. And because of thousands of people over thousands of miles protecting my hike, I was able to climb Katahdin.
Wow.
And so that was probably one of the most eye-opening moments of my life. I can do something. I can accomplish something. Yeah, I accomplished the military, I graduated high school, but I'd accomplished something from nothing. And so that was when I started opening more up and stuff. And of course, it was on my hike that I regained connections with people. Moving around in high school, I would lose connections constantly. Building the connections up in the military, only to, when you get out, you're done, you go home. They're over. Those connections are built and then destroyed and lost, built, destroyed, and lost. And on my hike, I had connections that were just so deep that these couldn't be lost. And then at the end of my hike, I go home and realized that it was lost. You can't find somebody by the name of Twinkle Toes. You can't Google Aristotle. Aristotle was a great friend of mine. He was deaf. Hiked with him for a week and a half. I was in the river down at Hot Springs, and he was hiking out, and he kind of signaled to me that he had left his hiking poles for me at the hostel. Like I said, I got most of my gear from this way, but he had left some poles for me, and he was hiking out. I grab the poles, 5-6 hours after him, I hike out. Never saw him again. Just gone. One of my best friends, and I have no idea. There's no way. You can't get on social media and find this Aristotle. As a matter of fact, for 10 years I've been telling this story, and I still have not found Aristotle. So, in the darkness of another loss, I said I would like to create a way for hikers to reconnect after the trail. It was a silly idea. I called friends. I said, hey, I want to make this thing. They kind of were like, oh, it might work, it might not. It was 2 weeks before trail days. Called down to trail days and said, hey, I need a booth. And they were like, cool, for next year? I'm like, no, for the next 2 weeks. And they were like, that is not the way that works. I was like, but it's the only way this works. So my friend, she started looking at all of the Airbnbs and asking them if we could rent their front yard to do a photo booth. And one said yes. So the first day, I was telling the story, I'm trying to reconnect hikers after the trail. A few people lined up. The following day, there was a line all the way down the street. Like everyone that was hiking that year heard that we were trying to give them a way to reconnect after the trail, and they came. So the first yearbook was produced, and we were like, all we have to do is sell 100 copies of this thing to break even, and then when we break even, we could do it again next year and build. And we sold about 12 copies. So I printed 120 copies. So every time I see a 2014 yearbook, it's like, whoa, like there's only 120 of these in the world, and I have 2.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, of the 14 copies, the 12 that we sold, my mom bought 2. So,
Yeah.
So that's when the yearbook started. And so the following year, I got on trail with Nima as far as being trail support, and we decided we're going to go all the way to Maine the way that Miss Janet does, and support hikers and show them the yearbook and stuff. So with the book in hand, I was like, guys, look, you know how you only know somebody by the name of Giggles? Well, you can check the back of the book and find Giggles and get their real name and their trail name and all of that, and then you can contact all these people that you know. And they were just like, oh my God, this is something that this community wants. And so the second year, we produced the book, and we were able to sell about 200, 300 copies, I think, And I was like a little worried. I was like, okay, this thing is moving very slow, and I can't work during the hiking season. I have to be out there working on this. Can it happen? Can it not? So we were looking for ways to raise money and get funds in, stuff like that, to do the project, and the community stepped forward, and they were like, we got you, just go. So get on trail, do the thing. The third year, excuse me, I know that caught on camera. So the third year, it exploded. Everyone wanted the book, everyone knew about the book, people started sending me their photos. I didn't have to individually take every single person's photo. I was hiking with a camera, and I would stop people. I would explain to them what I was doing, and then I would take their photo. For 1,000 people, and it was unmanageable. But by the third year, the idea took off. You could send in your own photo. So then it was established, and I was given a backstage pass to the Appalachian Trail. Like I had no idea what all was going to come with it. I didn't realize that I was going to live in a school bus. I knew that it was going to be difficult, but I had my mission.
Yeah, and like I said in the beginning, you'll know a man by his deeds. And what you've done here has been an incredible service for our community. But I want to talk a little bit more about the person and kind of what we go through that helps to contribute to who we are today. And as you're talking, as you're going through your experience in high school and military, I don't know if this is a question that you can really answer now, but I figured I'd ask you anyways. Is there any predisposition to the kind of what Nibelwell Nomad calls Wanderlust that's within our soul? Maybe not everyone's soul, but especially people like you and I, people that come into the Appalachian Trail. What do you think it is that, and again, we all come out for different reasons, but one common theme I've seen within all of us is things always come to a head at a certain place in life. And I don't know if that originates in childhood. I don't know if it's a nature or nurture kind of thing, whether it's something we experienced as we're growing up. And I don't know if you can really answer that question, but I am curious, your experiences in childhood and high school and college, or not college, but the military. Was there anything that really sticks out to you during those years that may have, I guess, contributed to that wanderlust?
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
The travel, honestly, being able to see that it was 8 hours away to go see the Arch in St. Louis. It was 7 hours away, and we can go to a beach. I had experience with that shown to me by my parents. We would go and do these things, and there's a lot of people, especially inner city life, that never get to really travel to go, and they don't have exposure to even realize that it's there. I think one of the saddest conversations I ever had, my heart was just broke for this guy. He was a homeless veteran on the streets of New York, or not, and he was an older guy, and he was drunk, and so I was asking him, like, well, what's your experience? He's like, well, other than the Vietnam, the streets of New York. And I was like, oh, I'm sure you've been down to Florida and stuff. And he's like, I literally have not left the island. I go to Long Island and I come down here. And I'm 67 years old. And so other than that, I know Vietnam. And I was just like, there's so much more.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so much more. And it was the simple not having exposure to know it's there. Like, you're not going to go look for it if you don't even know it's there. So I think that I was blessed by being shown very young in life that there's so much more. You can't even get all the places.
Yeah.
And so I was really glad I was brought up in that way.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, we find ourselves in that camp, that the desire to expand our own horizons and see what else is out there. And then to a certain degree, you had that, but also when you were coming out of the Navy or the military, there was a sense of confusion and what am I gonna do with my life? Or if not that, maybe it's just depression. I've heard you talk about depression a lot, and I was going somewhere with that. Thank God for editing. But one of the things that I like that you bring awareness to is the issue of depression, and because it starts for a lot of people before they come out on trail, and that's the catalyst for why a lot of people are out on trail. And obviously, I think the trail provides so much for people. It does, in a sense, provide a liberation and a freedom, but we know that it's not the end-all be-all, because every year you bring light to the fact that that hikers who have hiked the trail are still committing.
After hike.
After their hike, yes. Did you want to speak a little bit to that?
With my exposure over the last 10 years of seeing the hikers in the beginning of the trail and then supporting them all the way to the end of the trail, both north and southbounders, you see that 100% of the hikers that come out there are broken. They come from dark places. They do. Like, even the ones that had everything, they have this thing inside of them that needs to be fixed, and those are the ones that the trail calls. And so what they do is they get on the trail and they first work on their bodies. They build their bodies. They get their water, they get their vitamins, they get their muscles, they get their stamina. Then they build their gear. They slim down their packs, they get the better stuff, they make sure they are adequate at filtering water, they get their shelters. They protect themselves by building a persona that is bigger and stronger than anything. And very quickly, this persona tricks them into not working on what they came to the trail for. It's really hard to work on a problem when you have no problems. that's the first trick the trail plays, and then it knocks you on your butt, and it reminds you of why you're there. So the growth of hikers is incredible. Like I've seen children turn into men and women. I've seen people come out with their true selves of who they were. I've seen growth of abused, neglected. I've seen suicidal people, and by the end of the trail, they've blossomed into this incredible thing. And a lot of healing took place, and a lot of growth took place, and then they go home, and immediately within 12 hours from leaving the Appalachian Trail, they stop drinking water. They stop getting the exercise. Their social outlet has reduced to zero. Their exercise, all of it, it's just gone the day of summit. And in 2013, in the winter of 2013, the year that I hiked, we had a 14, there was a 15, there was a 16, a 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I can't say about 22, but there's a pattern. And these are long distance hikers. These are people. These are our best friends. And these are people that on trail were gods. You would have never seen it coming. But I haven't seen a winter after a hike that the class didn't have a suit.
Yeah.
And that's the ones we know about.
Yeah.
I wonder how many there are that committed before their hike.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot more of those too.
Yeah. One of the things that I talked about in my last video was the, checking your motives at the door when you step on the trail, because, like you said, I think a good way to summarize some of what you're saying was there's a big sense of escapism on trail. People that are literally, figuratively walking away from their problems in their life. And for some people, that's just what they need. But for a lot of people, it's just a case of eliminating the symptoms and not getting to the root cause of what's troubling them in life. And look, I know you're not an expert, on any of these things, but then again, you've been around so many people who are dealing with a similar issue. What would be a piece of advice you'd give for those who are at that kind of crossroads in life? They're thinking about coming out on trail. What would be some advice you'd give to them in light of some of these issues like depression?
The first step is the hardest, and the last 2,000 miles is the reward, if you can do it. If you're sitting there in your couch in a dark room and this is the 50th video you've watched today about hiking, then maybe you need to get the fuck up and go hike. Because if you don't, you're gonna die. So just go, just go. And you might not make it. You might not, that's fine. There's so many people that don't make it, but there are way more people that don't start, and don't be one of those that don't start.
That's good advice. So you've been out here since basically 2013, right? You've been out on the trail, immersed in this subculture. It's funny,
Paradise.
It is.
It's also war.
I forget sometimes that this is a subculture that is unknown to most of the United States. When I talk with people, I'll refer to things.
It's not like we're a cult. We don't change our names and follow some path and...
No.
Well...
Exactly. So you've seen a lot of change. I mean, personally, I hiked in the year 2020. We know that's an outlier. I hiked also the next year. I did a flip-flop with my now wife, Lori, and from that year to the next, I noticed and I observed a lot of change in our community. This community, which was once small, is now very big.
Same trail, different people.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Even if you hike again, it's the same trail, you're a different person. Like you're never going to get your hike back because you will never be who you were when you hiked it again. So you can hike this trail as 6 different people if you want to. Like I know people who have hiked it as 12 different people. So
Yeah. What are some of the things that you've seen, good and bad, change through the years on trail that you've noticed?
Yeah, there's a massive change, and I think the starting factor of the mega change started probably during my hike of 2013. That's when the social media started picking up and the exposure of the trail and the hikers, and the personalities started getting out, because on the trail the personalities are incredible. I mean, these are gods. So it's very easy. It makes really good FaceTime. Easy to get the likes and the shares and the comments. So the exposure of the trail itself has changed to the point that, like I said, I didn't know about the trail 2 months before my hike. My older brother pointed out the trail to me 2 months before my hike. I had no idea. And now just your layman is going to know, oh yeah, I know about the Appalachian Trail. Doesn't that go from like, wherever to wherever? Isn't it like 1,000 miles long or something?
Yeah.
And but so what's changed is the public view of the trail. Mm-hmm. What hasn't changed is that the trail is dirt and rocks and roots, and it's hard and it's easy and it's fun and it's annoying. That hasn't changed, and it never will, but the people will. Mm-hmm. It's just a line in the dirt. Can't change that much. You can reroute it, same line.
Yeah. Needs to be a lot more rocks in Pennsylvania, though.
You know why? So the glaciers pushed down to Pennsylvania and stopped, so that's the till. Mm. The glaciers tore up all the rocks and then stopped and dumped it in Pennsylvania and left.
Yeah.
It's, leave no trace, glaciers.
And that's actually where we're at right now. We're in the middle of
Pennsylvania.
Middle of Pennsylvania. And you are kind of in a different place in life right now. A similar place, I would say, to myself. Just a couple years ago, I was hiking on the AT, and not even a couple years ago, about a year ago at this point. And now I'm married and got a house, and you're married and
got an attic.
And you're living with your wife.
Right.
And I'm curious, what's that transition kind of been like for you? Because the reality is we're not all going to be able to hike forever. Some people can. Maybe Nimble will know, man. You can probably hike forever, into eternity.
I watched him do it.
But at some point, we have to transition into a different phase of life. And I don't know.
Careers, marriage, going back to college. There's the trail doesn't end at the northern or southern terminus. It begins there. Mm-hmm. So everyone has to keep moving forward. There has to be a next thing. And mine is, I did get married, which is the most incredible thing. I never saw it coming. When I met my wife, I only met her for a few minutes, and I just had this like feeling about her. I was just like, wow, she's completely different. And then I didn't see her again for like 2 years. And then I saw her again, and I was like, wow, she's completely different. And so that's been quite the journey in getting married. And that's not why I'm stopping the yearbook, or not. I'm not stopping. I'm passing the yearbook on to the Appalachian Trail Museum. The idea was always to pass the book off to the museum, and my wife has given me a lot of strength in order to help me do that, but she would have been on the school bus with me had it not have been time for that to happen. She would have been there with me. Having someone that you love is, that's so special. It's so special.
Why do you get married? I know that sounds like a crazy question, but I feel like within our culture, there's a lot of people saying not to do certain things, not to get held down, and that's how people see it. Especially in our community where everything is so nomadic, right? Yeah. You're always on the move, and we don't want to be tied down to anything. Why does a man in your position, coming from where you come from and doing what you've done for so long, why do you get married?
If you don't want to be married, then don't. There's a lot of reasons to not be married. The reason I got married is because when I looked at the woman and said, I want to give you everything. I want to make the biggest promise I could possibly make to you. and I think it's kind of a cultural thing, a religious thing to do the ceremony, but I just wanted to show that I'm giving her the greatest promise that I possibly can, that all of my decisions will involve her. And you can do that without marriage, of course, but if with the path that she and I both were on, it was the right decision to make, to stand in front of her, her family, my family, God, and say we are devoting ourselves to each other, because that's what marriage is. It's a devotion. You know, it's not a relationship you can have with anybody. You have hundreds of relationships, and you're supposed to. Marriage to me was a devotion, and that's what I wanted to enter into, more than a promise. I could have promised her the world, but I wanted to devote myself to her, and that's why I married her.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm happy for you, man.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Yeah, and I know it takes a lot of guts to do that, but at the same time, it doesn't.
Not for me. I heard she was a little nervous.
It's like, wow, I'm really doing this. I'm really committing to this, devoting myself to this. But you know, it's not just an obligation. It's it's this joy. It's this freedom that you have. Now you have this partner for life. And
it's like you're getting a partner in the game of Monopoly. Only you didn't realize you were playing Monopoly before you got married, so now you have to explain why you've been to jail twice and didn't collect $200.
That's great. I like that. So you've transitioned to this point in life from the not. I don't know you're going to be back on the trail, but now you're
I'm never leaving the trail.
now you're married, and you've given us some context, some background on the Hiker Yearbook, and you've mentioned that it's going to be passed on now.
Appalachian Trail Museum.
So do you want to dive into that a little bit?
Yes. So I made a conscious decision very early on that the Hiker Yearbook would be called a project and never a business, and that it would belong to the Appalachian Trail community. I took up the reins to lead and guide and create the Hiker Yearbook project, but I knew by my own bylaws that it was never mine. It belonged to the Appalachian Trail community. And it was easy to say and do. I did things like I never took on a sponsor, not once. I had several companies call me and say, hey, you know, why don't you take our tent and give us a review? No, I'm not going to do it. I never put in a paid ad, not in a single book, you know. And the thing about this book is it doesn't make money. Like it doesn't. It'll pay its bills. It'll pay its own way up the trail, but don't think it's going to pay for your hike. So I could have very easily monetized it. I could have very easily sold all the ads and stuff like that, but I wanted to make sure that it was pure, because there was going to be a day when the trail said it's time for you to walk away. And I was not going to be able to walk away if I handed a project over that owed anybody anything. If this book had one paid ad, then it would owe that page to some company somewhere, you know, and I refused it. Whenever I needed help financially with things, the community always stepped forward. I was very blessed in that way. So I never created a yearbook debt. And then when the day came that it was time for the project itself to move on and grow without me, I was able to go, here, I owe nothing. And so that was very important to me. And so passing it along to the Appalachian Trail Museum is not something that just happened. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know this, I was going to approach the Appalachian Museum in the year 2020 and have them take over the project. And then 2020 said, keep doing your job. So I got to work and I did my job.
I have a question. Is the AT Museum associated with the Appalachian Trail Conservancy?
AT Museum is a nonprofit entity that is not associated with anyone in general. Of course, they do work closely with the ATC, and they're very good friends with the ATC, as well as ALDA, and of course their local trail clubs and areas. So the AT Museum is a friend to a lot of different organizations, groups, and companies, of course, but they are not associated in any way. They are the core history of the Appalachian Trail. That's what they are. They are a nonprofit, standalone and their mission is just to preserve the history of the hikers.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think it's super important, especially in this day and age. There's so much connectivity. There's a lot of big brands out there. You know, there's Backpacker Magazine. There's networks online and podcasts that kind of pull a lot of people from the community together and make content. But there's very few things that come directly sourced from the community itself, and that's exactly what this is, and that's why so many
Right.
people have.
it took 20,000 hikers to make this. It took 20,000 hikers. Like, I didn't do this.
Yeah.
I was 1/20,000th of a assistant in making it happen, but no, the community makes this. This comes from the community. The community of hikers send in their own photos. I have organized and produced and put it all in, and then the community of hikers had to pay the money in the end to buy the book in order to support the project, to keep the project going. And so then it was always their decision if it was going to continue, if it wasn't going to continue, where it was going to go. And it was my responsibility to see to it and protect it, to get it to where it was going. So a lot of people think that I sold the project. I hear that a lot, like, oh, I heard you sold it. And it was like, no, I could have. I could have very easily sold this project to a influencer, a brand. It could have gone to any company. Can you imagine Backpacker Magazine owning this book? Like, it's a book.
No.
Why not a magazine owning it?
Yeah.
But at that point, it would have not come from the community. So in my meditations of wondering where it was going to go and how it was going to get there, I considered a lot of places. I considered, obviously, the ATC should be considered first. That was not the right place for this book. Aldo was another. The Appalachian Long Distance Hiking Association would have been a wonderful place for this book. There is no doubt in my mind that Aldo could have loved and protected this project, but it still just wasn't the right place, and I had to look at it and think about it, and I go, well, what is it? And it's the history of the trail, it's the history of the people. I have now 10 years of history books here. Where should these history books go?
Mm-hmm.
Appalachian Trail History Museum. And so that's, the decision was not come to out of just desperation. It was well thought out years in advance that this was going to go to the AT Museum. And I do believe, honestly, that if I would have offered it to them at the wrong time, they would have said no.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a funny story. I don't know if Larry Luxembourg will mind me telling this one or not. I was working with Nima. She helped with the project for the first 2 years incredibly. So we were presenting the first ever Hiker Yearbook that we had created, the 2014. We were presenting that at the Alda Gathering. And we go to the Alda Gathering and we're like, okay, we have this project, here's what it is and all this. And I walk over to the AT Museum and I was like, hey, I got this. And he was like, oh, I don't know. People have social media now. I just don't know if you're going to sell enough to support you and do this. And I mean, it's a good idea, but I don't know. And I was like, oh man, come on, let me give you 2 books in a trade for this other book that I really wanted. And he was like, okay, you know, I'll do this. I'll trade you the 2 books and we'll put them on the shelves and see if they sell from their bookshelves. And I was like, okay, but just trust me. This project is it's gonna be fine. The community wants this project. And he was like, well, you know, I wish you the best luck in the world, but that looks like quite the task. And so fast forward 9 years later, I walked to them and said, would you like to take on this project? And they were proud to take on this project because I had to prove it. I had to build it, and it had to be the history of the trail, like I kept saying it was going to be. It had to be the history of the hikers, and it couldn't be a commercial, and I couldn't be a brand. You know, I didn't want it to be Hiker Yearbook sponsors this Trail Days event. Like, no, I wanted to make this book, and because I did that very methodically, the AT Museum was like, wow, this is its home.
Yeah.
Let it come on over. So I'm working very closely with them in the next few months to produce the 2023 yearbook, and then they'll be on their own.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I strongly believe in the strict and literal preservation of history, and I think this is just another layer for that, especially on the Appalachian Trail, because the only way we're able to record who was here who hiked this trail is in Harper's Ferry at the halfway point there, where you sign in the register and get your picture, and in the beginning in the logbook on Springer. But apart from
I didn't know that was there.
Yeah.
No, and it snowed my year. So then I was about 3 or 4 days into the hike, and somebody had mentioned that book, and I was like, "Where was it at?" And they were like, "It's inside the rock." And I'm like, "How is it inside this rock?" And so then now I've signed it since then, but no, I didn't sign it my first year. I didn't know it was there.
Gotcha. Well, I'm excited for that, to see the new edition, and I'm just happy for you. I mean, it not everything can last forever. The seasons come and go, and especially with new creative projects and innovations.
Same trail, different me.
Yeah, and I don't know. This is kind of getting sidetracking here, but sometimes the person who created something can't be the one necessarily to carry it forward anymore. Sometimes it takes different people and along the way to carry things on and carry the torch on.
Oh, there have been several times in this journey where I've gotten a big head. It's like, oh, I'm Odie, like I drive this school bus and everybody knows me and here's what I think. And then the trail's like, bam!
Yeah.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Like, shut up. And knocks me on my butt, and then I crawl back. Like, I just want to make the book. Okay.
Yeah.
Come back and make the book.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, explain a little more of that to me, because I've had some conversations with some other trail personalities, and I think ego. We all have an ego inside of our being,
of course.
And it especially when people are stroking your ego out there, they're telling you how great you are, how great everything you're doing.
100 likes on a photo.
How
it's
do
wonderful.
you keep that in check?
It's hard. It is hard. I at first played the card of, oh, I'm so humble and I don't know how famous I am, and isn't it great how humble I am? And I'm like, boom, pride slap in the face. And then I was like, oh, well, then I'm going to be like just this positive, bring people together, and everything's always like sunshine and roses. I'm going to be that. And then the trail's like, bam, quit telling lies. And then it was a process and a journey, and everybody wants to be a little famous, like everybody wants that. I never intended on gathering any sort of notoriety of any kind, and it came like with just being out there and the project, and of course the social media side of the trail itself. So when it came, you get a little bit of ego boost, But if you're in tune with what the trail is and what the community is doing, then very quickly the trail will knock you back on your butt.
Yeah.
One of the things about fame, Miss Janet told me early on when I started this was, she said, you'll know that you've reached some sort of fame when you hear this wonderful story about something that you did that you never did. And I was like, oh, that'll never happen. That's weird. And then one day I'm sitting at this hostel, and these other hikers like, oh my God, Odie, I heard that you went and did this like huge thing. And I'm like, no, I was never there.
Just take credit for it, man.
So the notoriety is something that it came, and I tried my best with it. I tried to control my tongue. There were several times where I had very strong opinions, and I post this stuff and then say, oh, I'm just a regular everyday hiker, and then it's shared 100 times, and I'm just like, oh my God, like this was me in a very bad state of mind, thinking some dark thoughts, and I posted this opinion, and then there it goes. And the truth at the end of the day is that my opinion is no bigger, no better, no more informed, in most cases less informed than a lot of the ones that are working in the ATC or working in the board of ALDA, and they have a more connection with what's going on, and then I'm on the outside and I see that they had done something, and I'm like, boom, and then I say it, and then it just goes, and I sit in the background like, oh my God. And so in those moments I go, oh, well, y'all shouldn't have listened to me so much. I'm just a regular hiker. Like, I just try to play it's your fault that it got shared 100 times. It's like, no, it is my responsibility. It does come. Mm-hmm. These hikers that get on YouTube, they don't realize at first, at some point, the effects that they could have. There was one hiker that had gotten a great YouTube, wonderful channel. He was a good dude, had a great time on his hike. He gets to a hostel. He had a very bad experience. He made a very simple video about how he had a bad experience at that hostel. And my God, it exploded. And he felt horrible because he knew that there was 1,000 other hikers that had a wonderful experience, but they didn't have the presence he had. And that was a lesson he had to learn. You know, and then 1,000 people will hear you cuss and only 200 will listen to you apologize. So that was a weird one. I never saw it coming, but I hope I did okay.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? Where does the trail go from here?
Forward.
Forward.
Trail only goes one direction.
Does it go north or south?
It doesn't. It goes neither. Only goes forward. There's no other direction to hike this trail but forward, and it's going to go forward in its growth as far as the trail towns are going to grow. It's going to go forward as its growth and the amenities are going to grow. It's going to go forth in its exposure online, its funding, its impact in the world, but it is never, ever going to be more than dirt, rocks, and roots. That's it. It's a line in the dirt, and it can very easily be overrun by its presence online and by its exposure in the world. It could very easily be stomped out. So there's a core group that are the protectors of the trail. You know, they get out there and they cut back the bushes and they fix the blowdowns and they clean out the privies, and they do it quietly. And it's only because of them that we have this line in the dirt. There's, you know, a YouTube hiker can get, 30,000 likes on his video. It has nothing compared to the impact of a hiker that put in a stone step going up Mount Washington. And it never will. Because when you've laid that step, 1 million people will step on that step and they will never know you were there. And that's the trail. So if you want to be part of it, be part of the invisible part as often as you possibly can.
It's awesome.
Or it'll slap you in the face.
Yeah. Well, hey man, this is wonderful. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you've done for me personally.
I hope my rambling made sense.
Along the journey, it made complete sense. And I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people watching. So thank you again.
Hi, family. I love you.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Cool.
Sweet.
That's my baby.